I'm going to review riveting to you guys because I know some of you really, really despise it. And on your belt buckle, you are able to solder or rivet. But it's important for you guys to figure out when you should do what and when it will be easier for each technique. So I usually like to rivet all the time. I really like riveting, but when a piece of metal gets really big, bigger than 2 by 2, usually it is sufficient to rivet something. And sometimes you can solder it. The cool thing about riveting is there's no solder cleanup. That's what I really like about it. And you can patina it beforehand, and then it won't damage your coloration. So the first thing you need to do is obviously drill the holes, right? And everybody remembers how to use the drill, but then drilling the holes, do you just make up a size? No. You have to use the B&S gauge. You got to use the B&S gauge over here and use the slot, okay? Does everybody know what I'm talking about? All right. So this is 14 gauge and this is 11 gauge. So that means the drill bit, you have to find the same size or 1 gauge larger, which is either 11 or 10, 14, or 13. All right? So I've pre-drilled those. Okay. So I like to use a saw because it cuts it straight. You can use wire cutters or snips when you're using the wire, but then you have to file it flat. When you're doing rivets, you have to make sure that you file them all flat. It's really, really important. If you don't, first of all, they won't look very well, and they might actually not function as a rivet. Your pieces could fall apart. If you forget any of these steps, this video is going to be online soon, and there's a quick riveting steps handout on there. It also has a diagram of how long the rivet should extend past the metal that you're trying to rivet together. And a good rule of thumb is I usually make it a little bit thicker than one of the pieces of metal that I'm riveting. Can you see that, Justin? Okay, so I have that cut. I sanded it on both sides. And a little trick, if your rivets are really hard to hold, you can actually sand it while it's in there. Really easy, it kind of holds it. So your next step would be to rivet it, and you're going to use a smaller hammer, a riveting hammer, or a ball peen hammer. And you can use one of those, remember the sleeves that were up there? You can use a riveting sleeve. I don't have one over here. So I'm going to lightly tap on this top piece. And then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to hammer it on the bottom piece. And that's a wire rivet. Okay? Now the tube rivet. Raise your hand if you've done a tube rivet before. What's the major difference between a tube rivet and a wire rivet?
The tube has a hole.
One does have a hole, but do you have to hammer it differently?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there another tool you got to use first? Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tapered piece of steel, and it flares out the tube so that it doesn't crush inward when you're hammering it. So I don't know how you guys measure your metal. This is how I do it. I don't know if it will help you or not. You guys have probably found your own method. But usually if I have to saw something and I'm trying to measure it, I'll put it through here, and I'll hold it with my opposite sawing hand, and I'll get it there, and then I'll put my thumb where it needs to be cut, and I'll make a little mark. That's how I do it. I don't know if anybody else found a better way. Anybody? Anybody? Do it differently? More clever? No? Okay. So, here's the piece cut, filed flat, nice and straight. Never use snips or wire cutters when you're cutting tubing. It just kinks it closed and it gets ruined. It doesn't look well, it doesn't function, and it ruins my tubing. Okay, so I have this in here, and I'm ready to flare it out, so I'm going to use this first, and then I'm going to use this hammer because this is a piece of steel, right? And I'm not going to hit it really hard because I don't want it to crack on me. So I flared it a little bit, and then I'm going to hammer it flat like this. Kind of moving my hammer in a circular direction so I can kind of push the tubing around so it falls down rather than inward. And then the worst is when it slips out. You gotta hold it and kind of slide it on. And then I just do the other side. And then you have a rivet. You can also make things move this way. All right, you guys got it? All right, cool, thanks.